Smile, Pat. It's our night, Brittany whispered like she was doing me a favor, and for a second I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Retirement parties are supposed to be warm, simple, a little sentimental cake, a few kind speeches, maybe a slideshow that makes you laugh at your old haircuts. Mine was set in a modest country club outside Indianapolis, the kind with white tablecloths and a dance floor that's seen more anniversaries than scandals. I was 63 years old, freshly retired after nearly 4 decades of early mornings and steady work, and I'd spent the whole afternoon getting ready the way my mother taught me. Slow, careful, grateful. The dress I chose wasn't flashy. It was navy knee-length, tailored just right, the kind that makes you stand a little taller without trying. I'd bought it a year earlier after a hard season at work, telling myself when you finally cross that finish line, you'll do it looking like you. That dress wasn't just fabric. It was a private promise I kept to myself. I arrived 10 minutes early, hugged my old coworkers, and let myself feel proud until the room shifted. You know that sensation when a conversation stutters, when people's eyes flick toward the door and then back again like they're watching something they can't name? The music didn't stop, but the air changed. Then Brittany walked in, arm linked with my son Ethan, smiling like she'd been cast as the lead. And there it was, my dress, on her body, fitted and familiar, the same neckline, the same seam I'd had altered, the same quiet confidence I'd saved for this exact night. She turned once, slow, letting compliments land on her like confetti. "You look amazing," someone said, and Brittany laughed. A light little sound that belonged in commercials. I stood there holding my clutch so tight the edges pressed into my palm. Ethan's eyes flicked to me, then away, like a man watching a storm he hoped would pass without rain. Brittany glided to the center of the room, greeting people I'd invited, accepting praise meant for a moment she hadn't earned. When she leaned in close, her perfume sharp and sweet, she said that line. "Smile, Pat. It's our night." And the word "our" hit me harder than the theft. Because a dress can be returned. But a moment? A milestone you've carried quietly for years? That's harder to get back once someone else is wearing it in front of an audience. I did not say a word right away because I have learned that shock makes you clumsy. If I opened my mouth in that moment, something sharp might have slipped out, and Brittany would have loved that. She would have turned it into a story about how I could not handle change, how I was jealous, how I was making a scene at my own party. So I breathed in slowly and made myself look at details instead of feelings. The navy fabric sat on her shoulders the way it had sat on mine in my bedroom mirror. And the sight felt unreal, like watching someone walk around in your handwriting. People kept smiling at her, the way people do when they think they are being kind, and I could hear my coworkers murmuring polite confusion. A few of them looked from Brittany to me, then back again, as if they were trying to solve a puzzle without embarrassing anyone. My best friend from work, Denise Harper, stepped closer and lowered her voice. She did not ask if I was all right. She asked, "Do you want me to do something?" That is the difference between pity and loyalty. I told her, "Not yet," because I needed to understand what I was dealing with. Brittany was not hiding. She was performing. She drifted from table to table like she had planned every centerpiece, every playlist song, every name card. She even squeezed Ethan's hand and guided him toward the head table, the one my coworkers had saved for me. I watched her take the seat closest to the microphone stand, the seat that should have been mine, and she did it with such ease that for a heartbeat I wondered if I had lost my place in my own life without noticing. Ethan hovered behind her, smiling too hard, like a man trying to keep plates from falling. He leaned down to whisper something to her, and she patted his hand in a way that made him look smaller than I had ever seen him. When I finally stepped forward, Brittany turned her head and gave me a sweet expression that did not reach her eyes. "Pat," she said, loud enough for 2 nearby tables to hear. "I hope you do not mind. I thought it would be fun to match the theme." There was no theme. My retirement was the theme. I felt my cheeks heat, but I kept my voice steady. "That is my dress," I said, not as an accusation, just a fact. Brittany laughed lightly, like I had told a harmless joke. "It is just a dress," she replied. Then she leaned in, close enough that only I could hear, and added, "People will remember the energy tonight, not the outfit." That was when I realized she was counting on me to swallow it. She was counting on me to shrink, to smile, to let her borrow my moment the way she had borrowed my fabric. And as the room filled with clinking glasses and warm applause for a life of work, I stood there understanding something colder. This was not about looking nice. This was about who got to stand at the center, and who was expected to quietly accept the edges. I took my seat where there was room, not where I had been placed on the little name card, because Brittany had already rearranged that too. My coworkers tried to make space, scooting chairs and offering small, apologetic smiles that said they knew something was wrong, but did not know how to fix it without making it worse. The head table looked like a magazine spread, and Brittany sat there like a centerpiece, her laugh floating over the clink of silverware. She raised her glass twice in 10 minutes, once to family support and once to new beginnings, as if she had retired right alongside me. Denise sat close enough to brush my elbow, a steady anchor. "I saw her walk in first," she murmured. "She wanted everyone looking." I nodded because that was exactly it. Brittany did not stumble into my spotlight. She stepped into it on purpose. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes, and Brittany accepted one without looking, then gestured toward the microphone stand as if she owned the schedule. The club manager, a polite man with a neat tie, approached her with a question. She pointed, he nodded, and I watched him walk away, already taking instructions from my daughter-in-law at my retirement party. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face calm. I had spent decades in offices where the loudest person in the room was not always the most powerful one, and I knew better than to confuse confidence with control. When the first planned speech began, it was supposed to be my former supervisor thanking me for years of work. He stood, tapped his glass, and smiled toward me. But before he could say my name, Brittany leaned toward him and whispered something with that same practiced sweetness. He blinked, hesitated, and then awkwardly shifted his attention to the head table. "And of course," he said, voice uncertain, "we are also grateful for the family who helped make this possible." His eyes flicked to me as if to apologize, and my chest went tight with a slow, steady ache. It was subtle, but it was real. My story being rerouted in real time. Brittany did not need to shout. She only needed to redirect the attention like a hand on a steering wheel. A few people clapped politely, unsure why they were clapping. Ethan smiled again, that strained, obedient smile, and I felt a fresh sting that had nothing to do with fabric. Denise's expression hardened in a way I had never seen during any workplace crisis. "She is rewriting your night," she said under her breath. Across the room, Brittany stood to take a photo with two of my colleagues, lifting her chin, angling her body, making sure the camera caught the dress, the table, the lights, the moment. She looked at me over the photographer's shoulder and offered a small, satisfied nod, as if to say, "See? Everyone is fine. Nobody is stopping me." And that was the moment I decided I would not beg for my place or fight for it like it was a favor. I would take it back the way I had earned everything else in my life. Quietly, cleanly, and on my own terms. When I excused myself, I did it with a polite smile, the kind women like me learn to wear like armor. I told Denise I was going to the restroom, and she squeezed my hand once, a quiet signal that she would hold my place at the table. The hallway outside the banquet room was cooler, quieter, lined with framed photos of golf tournaments and wedding receptions. All those carefully captured, perfect nights. I stood by the mirror near the powder room and looked at my reflection, trying to steady the swirl in my chest. It was strange watching my own face while someone else wore the symbol of my confidence inside that room. I was reaching into my clutch for a tissue when I noticed it. The small tag from the tailor still sat in my purse, the one I had kept by accident after the last fitting. I had meant to throw it away weeks ago. It listed the alterations, the date, the shop name, and a tiny note about the seam on the left side that had been adjusted because my hip sits a little higher than my right. It was not dramatic. It was practical. It was also proof. I slid the tag back into my clutch and took a slow breath. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Can we please not do this tonight? Brittany is trying to help." I read it twice because the words did not make sense at first. Help. As if stealing a moment was an act of support. As if I was the problem for noticing. I did not answer him. I was done arguing for basic respect in text messages. In the lobby I saw the club manager again. He was speaking to a couple near the front desk, but his eyes met mine and he offered a courteous nod. I walked over and said softly, "I think there has been some confusion about the program tonight." His posture straightened, professional and attentive, because my tone did not invite gossip. It invited correction. I asked him for the printed schedule, and the name of the person coordinating the microphone and slideshow. He handed me a clipboard with a neat list of times, names, and cues. My name was there in bold, with a 10-minute speech slot after dinner, followed by the slideshow my coworkers had prepared. Underneath it, in fresh handwriting, someone had scribbled changes. A different speaker listed. A different order. My eyes tracked the ink like it was a trail. I did not need a detective to know who had made those edits. Denise appeared in the lobby like she had been waiting for me to make a move. "I saw her talking to him earlier," she said quietly, nodding toward the manager. She acted like she was the organizer. My mouth tightened but my voice stayed calm. "Then we will unorganize it," I replied. I asked the manager for one simple thing: to return the schedule to what my coworkers had planned. Not to cause a scene. Not to confront anyone publicly. Just to follow the program as originally submitted by the hosting committee from my office. He hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Of course, ma'am," he said. In that moment I felt the first real shift of the night. Brittany had borrowed my dress, but she had also borrowed authority that was never hers. And authority, unlike fabric, can be reclaimed with a single quiet correction. When I walked back into the banquet room, I did not rush. And I did not look around like I was searching for permission. I returned the way I used to return to my desk after a difficult meeting. Shoulders back, expression calm, pace steady. Denise was waiting with my water glass untouched, and she slid it toward me like we were simply picking up a conversation. Brittany was still at the head table, still laughing, still soaking in attention, but I noticed something small that told me my quiet correction had already begun. The club manager was standing near the sound system with the event assistant, speaking in low tones while pointing at the original schedule. The assistant nodded and adjusted the microphone height. Brittany glanced over, frowned for a second, then smoothed her face back into a smile. She was used to controlling a room by acting like she belonged at the center of it, and she did not like seeing the room respond to someone else. Dinner was served, plates set down with practiced efficiency, and the conversation tried to settle back into normal. My coworkers asked me gentle questions about retirement plans, whether I would travel, whether I would finally sleep past 6. I answered like a normal woman at a normal party, but inside I was listening more than I was speaking. Brittany spoke louder than everyone else, dropping little lines meant to sound supportive. "Pat will finally relax," she said, as if she had signed my release papers. "We have so many ideas for her next chapter." She said her next chapter the way someone says renovation budget. Ethan nodded along, eyes flicking between his wife and me like he was watching a tennis match he did not want to lose. Halfway through the meal, I heard Brittany lean toward a woman at the head table, someone I recognized as a distant cousin of hers, and she lowered her voice as if it was private. But I was close enough to catch the shape of it. "Once she is officially done working," Brittany murmured, "it will be easier to get everything organized. The house stuff, the paperwork, all of it. Ethan does not like conflict, so I handle it." Her cousin made a small sound of agreement, the kind of hum people make when they assume they are hearing smart planning instead of something uglier. My fork paused in my hand. There it was. The real target. Not my dress. Not my moment. My position. My assets. My ability to say no. I felt a clear, cold steadiness settle over me. Not rage, not panic, just understanding. Brittany was not celebrating me. She was practicing ownership. Denise's eyes met mine, and I did not need to explain. She had heard enough to read the truth in my face. Across the room, Brittany lifted her glass again and smiled toward a cluster of my colleagues, ready to be admired, ready to be photographed, ready to be remembered as the bright, helpful daughter-in-law who made everything happen. And in that instant I stopped thinking of this night as something that had been stolen from me. I started thinking of it as the moment Brittany gave me a gift without realizing it. She showed her plan in public, under soft lights and polite applause, where I could see it clearly and respond with the kind of calm that leaves no room for argument. After that, I let Brittany keep talking because people who are performing always reveal more when you do not interrupt them. I ate a few bites so nobody could accuse me of sulking, and I smiled at the right moment so the room stayed comfortable. But my attention stayed sharp, following the small movements that mattered. When Brittany stood to check on the cake, she took Ethan with her, steering him toward the side hallway like a parent guiding a distracted child. I waited a full minute, then I rose too, smoothing the invisible wrinkles from my skirt, and I walked toward the sound table where the event assistant was cueing the slideshow. My former supervisor was nearby, looking relieved to see me, like he had been worried I would disappear. "Pat," he said softly, "I am so sorry about the mix-up earlier." I gave him a gentle nod. "There is no need to apologize," I told him. "I would just like to keep the program the way you planned it." He smiled, grateful for the simplicity of that request. Denise joined me, carrying her phone like it was nothing, but I could tell she was ready to back me up if anyone tried to twist the narrative. I leaned toward the event assistant and asked, in the same tone I used in meetings for years, "When you introduce the speaker after dinner, will you please use the name on the original schedule, not the handwritten edits?" The assistant glanced at the clipboard, then at the manager, then back to me. "Yes, ma'am," she said, and she looked relieved too, because people working events do not enjoy power games. Then I took out my clutch and felt the little tailor tag inside. The one detail Brittany could not charm away. I did not show it yet. I simply made sure it was there like a key in my pocket before I lock a door. On my way back to the table, I passed the hallway to the restrooms and caught a glimpse of Brittany and Ethan near the coat closet, heads close. Brittany was talking fast, hands moving, eyes bright with control. Ethan's shoulders were slumped, his face tight. I did not hear every word, but I heard enough when Brittany said, "We need to make sure she does not go sentimental on the microphone. Keep it light. Keep it light." As if my life of work was a party theme she could manage with a smile. Ethan looked up and his eyes met mine. For a second he looked like a boy caught doing something he knew was wrong. His mouth opened then closed again. Brittany turned and saw me watching, and her expression shifted instantly into friendly concern. "Pat," she called, voice sweet as frosting. "Are you okay? You disappeared." I walked closer, not hurried, not angry, just steady. "I am fine," I said. "I was making sure the program stays on track." Brittany's smile tightened. "Oh, I already handled that," she said too quickly. "I told them what would flow better." I held her gaze, calm as a courthouse clock. "Tonight is not about what flows better for you," I replied, quiet enough that only she and Ethan could hear. "Tonight is about what is true." Brittany blinked just once, and in that blink I saw a flicker of fear. Because she had expected noise. She had expected tears. She had expected me to play the part she wrote for me. She had not expected me to quietly take the pen out of her hand. After dinner, the plates were cleared and the room softened into that in-between hush where people expect a toast. The event assistant adjusted the microphone, and I watched Brittany straighten in her chair, already poised to rise like she had been waiting for her cue all night. She tapped Ethan's arm, a subtle signal, and he shifted his chair back half an inch as if he was preparing to stand with her. Then my former supervisor stepped up, and this time he did not glance at Brittany first. He looked directly at me. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steadier now, "we are here to celebrate Patricia Whitmore." My name landed in the room like a bell. I saw a few heads turn toward me with relief, like they had been holding their breath without realizing it. Brittany's smile did not disappear, but it froze at the edges. The supervisor spoke about my work, the long mornings, the years of steady reliability, the way I stayed late to help new hires without needing credit. As he spoke, the slideshow began behind him, and the first photo filled the screen. Me at 27 with a huge smile and an old office badge clipped to my blouse. People laughed warmly, the way they do when time makes everything softer. Then another photo. Then another, years passing in a gentle parade of hairstyles, co-workers and holiday potlucks. I felt something inside me unclench. This was my history, my effort, my life in plain sight. Brittany shifted again, and I noticed her eyes flicking toward the screen, calculating. She wanted to be part of the story, but the story did not need her. When the supervisor finished, he lifted his glass and said, "Pat, we would love to hear from you." The room turned toward me and I stood slowly. The dress on Brittany's body tried to pull my attention, but I did not let it. I let my eyes sweep the room. Denise's steady face, my coworkers' kind smiles, the club staff pausing. At the edges, even Ethan's anxious expression, like he was waiting to see which version of me would appear. I walked to the microphone with the calm of someone who has already made her decision. Brittany's gaze followed me, and I could feel her willing me to stumble, to sound emotional, to give her something she could later call dramatic. I placed both hands lightly on the podium, felt the smooth wood under my fingertips and smiled. Thank you. I began, voice clear, unhurried. I have worked a long time and I learned something important in all those years. The loudest person is not always the one who built the room. A few people chuckled, thinking it was just wisdom, just a sweet line. Brittany's smile twitched barely. I continued, letting warmth and truth share the same space. Tonight matters to me because it is not just an ending. It is proof that quiet effort adds up. And it is also a reminder that no one gets to claim your moment unless you hand it over. The room stayed attentive, and in that silence I felt the spotlight return to where it belonged, not with drama but with gravity. I did not raise my voice. I did not point. I did not need to. I simply stood there owning my story again, and for the first time that night, Brittany looked less like the star and more like a guest who had walked onto the wrong stage. The room stayed quiet after my last sentence, the kind of quiet that is not awkward but attentive. I could feel Brittany's eyes on me, waiting for me to say her name, waiting for me to turn this into a confrontation she could later twist into a story about how I embarrassed her. I did not give her that. I smiled toward my coworkers first, letting gratitude lead. I am thankful for every person who stayed late with me, who showed up early with me, who reminded me that work can be honorable when it is done with integrity, I said, and I meant it. A few people nodded, and I saw Denise's face soften. Then I let my gaze move slowly to the head table. I did not glare. I did not accuse. I simply looked as if I was acknowledging everyone who came. I also want to say something about what we choose to celebrate, I continued. Sometimes we think we are celebrating a person, but really we are celebrating a lifetime of choices. The small choices, the private choices, the choices that nobody claps for. Brittany shifted in her chair. Ethan's jaw tightened. I reached into my clutch with a calm motion, like I was about to pull out a note card. Instead, I lifted the small tailor tag between my fingers, not high like a trophy, just visible enough for the first few rows to notice. This may seem silly, I said lightly, allowing a gentle laugh to ripple through the room, but I kept this by accident. It is from the tailor who altered my dress. I heard a few surprised murmurs, soft and restrained. Brittany's smile became brittle. It lists the date, the shop, and a specific adjustment on the left seam. I went on, voice warm, almost conversational. I mention it because it reminds me that what fits you is usually the result of someone else's careful work. And it is easy to forget that when you are standing in front of a mirror. I paused just long enough for the meaning to settle without me spelling it out. People glanced from the tag to Brittany, then back to me, then away, polite but aware. Brittany let out a small laugh, too loud for the moment. Pat, do you want me to take it off right now? She called, trying to turn it into a joke, trying to make me look unreasonable. I kept my expression gentle. No, I replied, and my tone was so calm it left her nowhere to go. Tonight is not about taking anything off. Tonight is about putting things back where they belong. The room stayed still, and in that stillness I heard Ethan inhale sharply, like someone waking up. I continued, steady and clear. I am proud of my years of work, and I am proud of the woman I became along the way. I do not need anyone to manage my story, my home, or my next chapter. My eyes met Ethan's and I held them. I can handle my own life, I said, not cruel, not loud, just true. Ethan looked down, then back up, and for the first time all evening he did not look at Brittany for approval. Brittany's smile faltered, and she lifted her glass, as if to hide behind it. I did not press harder. I did not need to. The point had landed cleanly, like a letter placed on a table where everyone can see it. When I finished speaking, I did not linger at the microphone like I was waiting for applause to prove something. I simply thanked everyone, lifted my glass once, and stepped back as if the evening had always been meant to flow this way. The room exhaled. Someone started clapping, then another, and soon it became a warm wave that had nothing to do with conflict and everything to do with closure. My coworkers stood, not dramatically, just naturally, and I saw faces I had known for years smiling at me with the kind of respect that cannot be staged. The event assistant quietly turned the lights up a touch, and the music returned at a softer volume. I walked back to my table, and Denise squeezed my shoulder like she was proud of me in a way that did not need words. Brittany remained seated at the head table, her posture stiff, the smile on her face working overtime to look normal. She avoided my eyes, busying herself with her napkin, her glass, anything that would keep her from having to face the truth she had tried to decorate. Ethan stood up slowly and followed me before I could sit down. He did not call me Mom in a theatrical way. He said it like he meant it. "Mom, can we talk for a second?" His voice was tight but honest. I nodded and we stepped into the hallway where the air was cooler and the noise was muffled behind the doors. He looked down at the carpet, then up at me, and his eyes were damp with embarrassment more than sadness. "I let it go too far," he said. "I thought keeping the peace was helping you." I shook my head gently. "Keeping the peace is not the same as keeping the truth," I replied. "Peace that requires me to shrink is not peace." Ethan swallowed, then nodded, and for the first time all night he looked like my son again, not someone's assistant. Brittany appeared at the doorway a moment later, her expression caught between irritation and panic. "Ethan, are you coming?" she asked, voice too bright. Ethan did not move. He looked at her and said steady and clear, "We are not doing this anymore. You do not get to manage my mother." Brittany's face flickered, and for a heartbeat she looked like she might argue, but then she noticed the club manager passing by, and the hallway's quiet attention, and she recalculated. She forced a smile and said, "Fine. I was just trying to make it nice." I did not correct her. I did not need to. I simply said, "The nicest thing you can do for me is respect my boundaries." Then I walked back into the banquet room and rejoined my coworkers as they sliced cake and told stories about the time the copier caught fire, and the time we all got snowed in and turned a late night into a potluck. The rest of the evening felt lighter, like a weight had been moved off the table. Later at home, I found my closet exactly as I had left it, except for the empty hanger where my dress had been. The next morning it came back on my porch in a garment bag with no note. I hung it up, ran my fingers along the left seam, and smiled at how perfectly it fit me. That week I changed my locks, updated my paperwork, and set a new rule for my life. Love is welcome in my home, but entitlement is not. And when I looked at my calendar and saw the word retired written in bold, I finally felt what I had earned all along, not just freedom from work, but freedom from being quietly taken for granted.